everyone, Gaara here and welcome to the second part of my Gadgetzan review video. In this video I'm going to review another batch of 18 cards, and this closes us on almost 40, which is a little bit less than 1/3 of the total cards. And let's, without further ado, just jump right into it. So let's kick this off with the neutral cards. In this episode I'm gonna talk about 7 newly announced or released neutral minions. This is the very first one. It is the Cookie Chemist. It is a 4 mana 4/4 battle cry, swap the attack and health of a minion. So this is actually a very cool new Crazed Alchemist, pretty much. Very similar stats. Crazed Alchemist has 2 mana and 2 attack and 2 health, and this is basically a Crazed Alchemist for 4 mana. Same effect, same stats. Very cool actually. So if people liked Crazed Alchemist but they didn't really want to play a 2 mana card in their deck, so now they have the option to play a little bit more expensive Crazed Alchemist. So there's really not much to talk about in this card. It's just that if you want to have the Crazed Alchemist effect but you want to have like a little bit more mid-game oriented minion, so you have this as an option. Pretty cool card. The next card I want to talk about is the Wind Up Burglebot. So this is a 6 mana mech with 5 attack and 5 health. Whenever this attacks a minion and survives, draw a card. This seems to be, from a competitive standpoint, an unplayable card. I'm not quite sure why they release mechs. It's maybe for wild. You still have access to all the mechs there, but for standard, I don't see the mech team coming back, at least not with the announced cards so far. There's just way too few mechs, and GBG rotated out. Yeah, the stats are just too weak for a 6 mana minion, so you really have to compensate with this effect. And the thing about the problem with this effect is this minion will usually not survive the turn to attack, so it is going to be unplayable. And besides that, we have really powerful cards already in the 6 mana slot, so all those reasons sum it up that we will not see this card being played competitively. Also, like in fun decks, I would not see this card seeing too much play, not even in wild, because I would play a Sky Golem always over this card. This is one of those filler cards, and Blizzard also said that they're not just releasing good cards, they're also releasing like bad cards in their expansion. And yeah, it's interesting that this card is epic. I think they changed their philosophy about that, because this is obviously a very bad card, and if this would be common, they would this would be very popular in arena drafts. But since it is a bad card and it is epic, you get it very rarely in arena, so this is very interesting. I think this is the first time we see like such a bad card but being epic. I cannot really recall something very similar to this, so props to Blizzard if they want to introduce cards like this one, make them very high rarity. I think epic is the best one. It would be really stupid if this would be a legendary, because you would be super disappointed if you pull this as a legendary. So all in all, I don't mind this card being in the game. So the third neutral card, and this is a very exciting one, is the Friendly Bartender. At the end of your turn, restore 1 health to your hero. It is a 2 mana 2/3, which is pretty much average what you get for 2 mana if you're taking Totem Golem out of the equation. At the end of your turn, restore 1 health to your hero is a really good defensive effect. It's like you play this minion, it heals you, it's great, and you can play something on the board. And there's a lot of control classes like Priest or Paladin that don't really want to play any of the existing 2-drops in their decks, and they really have very bad to pretty much non-existent 2-drops as class cards. So this is a great card just to have the option when you try to build a control deck, a defensive contract, that you have access to a great 2-drop. I think this card is pretty good and very good effect, and we will most definitely see this card being played. And it has to be killed, even without it having taunt. It has to be killed just because it is an ongoing effect. So props to Blizzard for creating a very good playable 2-drop for control decks. So the next card is the Fell Orc Soul Fiend. First I thought this would be a Warlock class card, but it is a neutral minion. At the start of your turn, deal 2 damage to this minion. Very interesting. So the stats of this card are absurd. 3/7 for 3 mana. That's super powerful. And you are like the first turn you play this card, it is pretty much unkillable because it has 3/7 stats. And at the beginning of your turn, it goes down to a 3/5, which is still absurd for a 3/7 minion. So this is a very, very, very powerful minion. And it also finally, with this, with cards like this and the other priest cards, you can really see that they're pushing priest as a class in the next expansion, because priest usually had like a very bad hero power, because all the minions you play, usually you don't have to heal them, they get immediately removed, or you have to heal yourself. There's nothing you can utilize your hero power on really besides the Injured Blade Master. And this is a really great card. Like, damn, I can easily even see this card being played in aggressive decks. Just the stat line is way too crazy for 3 mana. If it goes down to a 3/5, it's still like better than anything that we have pretty much. I don't think that the issue is really that you lose 2 damage per turn. I think this is just a super powerful card. This might be even be broken and played in every single deck. Like, I haven't thought about it too much, but I'm looking at this card for the first time now, and I think it is a very, very powerful card. We will see it being played in a lot of control decks like Priest, if we don't get too many new cards. Like, it might be another case like with Rogue, for example. Rogue has a lot of powerful class cards, and we don't see a lot of those powerful cards being played just because we play different powerful class cards. The same with Shaman, right? We haven't seen many Lightning Bolts being played in Constructed because Rockbiter was so dominant as a card. But Lightning Bolt was never really a bad card, right? We've usually just seen it in aggressive Shamans. But as soon as Rockbiter got nerfed, you see like more Lightning Bolts because it's still a good card. And this might be another case. This card is insanely powerful, but we might have so many powerful other 2/3 drops that we might not see this card being played. But as it is for now, like right now, if you had this card, you would see this card being played in almost any deck. So it's just extremely powerful card. Interesting effect as well, because you have to think about it, like how to keep this minion alive. You want to build like a deck with synergy about it. You can put this, like for example in Priest together with Injured Blade Master. It is also really good with Resurrect, for example. Just a very, very powerful card. I'm excited to test out decks with this one. And the next card is Mistress of Mixtures. 1 mana, 2/2, Death Rattle, restore 4 health to both players. Another very great anti-aggressive control minion, you can say. I've seen a lot of people hyping up this card being like the next Zombie Chow and whatnot. I think that a 2/2 is way worse than a 2/3, and obviously restoring 4 health to both players is very, very early in the game actually irrelevant. And this is why Zombie Chow was so good. Healing your opponent for 5 that early in the game is usually very irrelevant. And so the 4 health to yourself that early in the game is usually irrelevant. And what it comes down to right now in Hearthstone is all about controlling the board. We don't really have many phase decks at all right now. It's all curve / early board control decks, early board control or mid-game board control decks, you know, decks that curve out. And you lose basically because you lose the board control, and all the control decks have very, very weak board clears. And this doesn't really help too much with board control. It is a 1 mana 2/2, which is better than what we have for the 1 mana slot, but the health gain is usually irrelevant. And a 1 mana heal, like you wouldn't play a 1 mana, like if you would dismantle this card, we would not play a 1 mana heal for 4 in most decks. Like for example, Priest has a 1 mana heal for 5. You don't really play this card in any Priest deck besides the Control Priest. Paladin has like Holy Light, heal for 6. But this is a Death Rattle, so when you need heal in Hearthstone, we need immediate heal. For example, the Tusker Jouster is an amazing card on paper. It can heal you for 7 with 5/5 stats for 5 mana, so value-wise much better than Healbot. But we almost never saw Jouster being played, and the reason is because it was unreliable. You had to win the Joust. So whenever you played the Jouster, you needed the heal because you were either that far behind on the board or that far behind with your life that you needed the heal. But as soon as you didn't get the heal, the card was just a 5/5 vanilla minion. And the thing with this card is usually when you need heal in Hearthstone, you need it immediately, else you wouldn't play the heal card, right? And with this card is that as a 1-drop, you don't need therefore heal that early in the game. It is a freaking 1-drop. Basically you play this on your first turn, so you will be at full life. So as a 1-drop, this will not heal you for 4. It's also irrelevant if it heals you your opponents for 4. It's basically the same as with the Zombie Chow. But Zombie Chow had 2 free stats for 1 mana, which was insanely strong for 1 mana. And this has basically same stats as Raven Idol, the Raven from Druid, and this card also doesn't see much play except in Beast Druid, but Beast Druid is not really a powerful deck right now. So I can see this card not being played that much, even besides all the hype from other card reviewers, because of all those reasons. And in late game, this card uses up a card slot in your deck and it has to really perform. We will maybe see this in decks like Paladin, because Paladin really struggles right now in the super early game, just because we have nothing else. So it's at least nice to have something. But I think this is just a decent card. I wouldn't say this is like super overpowered, this will make control decks work. It's definitely a decent card. So the value for 1 mana is definitely decent. A 1 mana 2/2 minion that has the potential to heal you for 4, and usually you play this in a control deck, you don't care if your opponent will get healed for 4. So it has pretty decent value for 1 mana. But I wouldn't go as far as this card is busted, right? Like this card is broken. Maybe it is going to be very good in classes like Warrior, which have like a follow-up weapon, so they will take phase damage on turn 2, and then you heal yourself with this minion. Like you play this on 1, it helps you with the trading into a totem golem, for example, and then you use your War Axe and then you get the heal back. But right now we still have cards like Blood to Ica, which basically do the same thing. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent card. I'm very happy that they introduced it. I think it's a decent card, but not the craziest thing in the world. So the next card is the Auction Master Beardo. After you cast the spell, refresh your hero power. 3 mana, 3/4, pretty average what you get right now for 3 mana. We call it the Spider Tank stats, even though Spider Tank is not a card anymore in Standard. It is a legendary, so you can play only one of those. It is a neutral legendary, which means you can play it in any class. After you cast the spell, refresh your hero power. It might actually bring back some crazy, you know, that in TGT, Blizzard really pushed the Inspire mechanic in Hearthstone. We see some Inspire cards being played, like the Thunderbuff Valiant in Shaman, but besides that, we don't really see that many Inspire effects. So, and using your hero power in Hearthstone is usually not good. You only use your hero power either if you kill a 1-drop, and it's like very efficient use because it gives you card value, or value in general, or if you have nothing better to do. So hero powering multiple times in 1 turn is usually not a great effect, but it is still an upside. So it is a 3 mana neutral minion with 3/4 stats, which has an upside effect. I can actually see this card being played in decks like Warrior, for example. Like in Tank Up, Justica Warrior, this is amazing. As soon as you have the Justica out, you play this and you go Tank Up, Tank Up, Tank Up, Tank Up. This is amazing. In decks like that, I can definitely see this card. I like this card, even though it doesn't look that crazy on paper. I will definitely play this card and try to make cool decks or make this work. I really enjoy this card. I wouldn't say this card is broken, but I think it's a powerful card. Very niche effect, cool stats. It's definitely playable. So let's move on to the final neutral minion of this episode, and it is Grook Fu Master. It is a 5 mana 3/5, and it has Wind Fury. So basically complete garbage. I'm trying to think about how much mana would this card need to cost that it might see some play. So if this would cost 4 mana, it would still be unplayable, because it would be basically Sen'jin without Taunt but with Fiend Fury instead, and we don't play Sen'jin right now, not even close to be playable. So for 3 mana, would we play a 3 mana 3/5 with Fiend Fury? Probably we would. So this card is overcosted by 2 mana pretty much. So there you can see, this is like an example of how bad this card really is. We would not see this card being played in any deck if it would cost 1 mana less. And another bad thing about this card, it is common, so you will have this card very often in arena drafts, and people will be pretty salty if they have to choose this one, because for 5 mana this card has abysmal stats, and the Wind Fury is usually, yeah, not a good effect, because the minion will just get killed on turn 5. I think it's a pretty bad arena card, pretty bad constructed card, but pretty cool artwork. So let's move on to the Grimy Goons in this episode, and there is just one new card that was released, and it is the Grime Street Smuggler. It has 3 mana, it has 2 attack and 4 health. It has the battle cry effect, give a random minion in your hand +1/+1. It is understudded by at least 1 attack for its mana cost, but it makes up for it with the battle cry effect. So it is a very similar card to Brun in terms of stats. It has the exact same stats, and the effect of it is definitely an upside. So you can play this card in Hunter, Paladin and Warrior. Warrior has pretty good free drops right now. Hunter has plenty of insane free drops, so I cannot see this card being played in Hunter too much. You just have much better options. Paladin has no free drops, so potentially in Paladin maybe like they're really pushing their aggressive Paladin in this expansion with the other cards they have shown so far, so maybe this is something you can play as an option. I don't, this card is not blowing me away or anything. It's an okay card, but I'm pretty sure there's just better options than this one. Just because the stats are not good. In a Hearthstone you really want to play the best stats you can possibly have per turn, so this card definitely struggles in that department. It is a battle cry, so it's kind of cool that you can combine it with Brand, for example, so you can buff 2 minions. And it is a female Tauren, which we don't see very often in the card design. It's an okay card, slightly below average. It's time to move on to the class cards for this episode. We have 2 new Druid cards that have been announced. One of them is the Mark of Lotus. It is a 1 mana spell with the effect give your minions +1/+1. So for 1 mana this effect is pretty below average. We have similar cards like this, like the Paladin card that gives you for 1 mana +1/+2, and we don't see it being played in any deck. So right now I would say for 1 mana to see this card being played, it has to buff a minion +2/+2. You need to buff at least 2 minions for this card to be good, and I can really see this in, let's say, an aggressive Druid type. I think this really might push the aggressive Beast Druid finally, because you tend to try to get a lot of small minions on the board. You play the Enchanted Ravens, you play Jungle Raptors and cards like that. You play a lot of stealth minions, and I can easily see you buffing 2 or more minions, and as soon as you buff 3 minions with this card, it's insane value. So it is basically a baby Power of the Wild. Yeah, it's an amazing card. You can combine this with Violet Teacher, and yes, cards like that for 1 mana. I think this card is very, very strong, and it will see a lot of play. And it will also make existing archetypes that we don't see that often being played much stronger. So I think this pushes a lot of more aggressive Druid versions as well. So a very, very good card. The next Druid card we have is Lunar Visions. It is a 5 mana spell, draw 2 cards, minions drawn cost 2 less. It is a very interesting ramp mechanic. Basically you pre-ramp with your draw. It's kind of cool. You can get minions out very quickly. This really helps like greedier decks. It gives you another option, and I think right now we are really struggling with card draw. What I really like is that Blizzard sees a lot of the problems in the decks. They're really improving with their card design. Like for example, right now if you play Druid, if you play a Ram Druid, any Druid, if you play Beast Druid, Ram Druid, Malygos Druid, any version of Druid, you auto include Azure Drakes, because Azure Drakes are so powerful with swipes, ref, and we basically have nothing else in that mana slot that is equally as good. With this card, we have a different option because you focus more on the ramp department. So if you play a lot of greedier minions, you would rather play Lunar Visions than Azure Drake, because you get those, like let's say we play as Ysera in our deck. Drawing Ysera from this card is awesome because it costs then suddenly 7 mana. So we can play Lunar Visions. Let's say on turn 6 we play Lunar Visions, and then we can play Ysera on the following turn. That's huge. And with Azure Drake, this would be very different. We don't want to draw the Ysera Azure Drake. So to push a ramp Druid play style, also this just reduces the minions, not spells. So it is probably a little bit more balanced as well, and it really pushes you to build like a ramp Druid version. So I really like this card. I don't think this will be broken. It might be broken. It's hard to say now in the first sight, and it's hard to say with all the minions that will release. But it's cool that we have this card, that we don't always have to auto-include Nourish, auto-include Azure Drakes. I think this card is equally as powerful, and it definitely will see play. And it's hard to say if it will push out Nourish or Azure Drake. It really will depend on, is Ram Druid going to be equally as powerful as the other archetypes of Druid. So definitely like this card, and yeah, can't wait to play it myself. Let's move on to the Hunter class cards, and we have only one so far. That is the Trog Beast Rager, but it is a supreme one. Battlecry, give a random beast in your hand +1/+1. Finally, Hunter gets a 2-drop, like finally. We got the Kindly Grandmother, which is awesome, but you need to play at least like 6 2-drops in Hunter, and all the other options are super bad. So finally we get a really good one. This is an extremely powerful card. It is a battle cry, so you can do some crazy stuff with it, like, I don't know, with Bran or whatever. Battle cry, free 2 stats, which is great for Hunter. It is not a beast, which would make it probably broken, but definitely a great card. 6 sick value. Anything you buff +1/+1 is pretty much insane as a follow-up. Like if you buff, let's say, the Cloaked Huntress to a 4/5, which is a Yeti for 3 mana, which is basically a mini ramp, if you want to say so. It is an extremely powerful card. We will see 2 of those in every single Hunter deck. I will guarantee you that. Great stuff. Let's move on. Here we have the Paladin cards. I'm going to talk about 2 different Paladin cards in this episode. It's the Grim Street Outfitter. It is a 2-drop, and before I get into the card, I'm really excited that they introduced so many low-cost minions. This is definitely what we need in this game. We don't need another 10 mana cost legendaries, which are unplayable anyways. I'm super excited about every 2-drop, 3-drop or 1-drop they introduce, even 4-drops. And let's get into the card. Battlecry, give all minions in your hand +1/+1, 1/1 stats. So crazy potential, definitely. It can, if you buff 3 or more minions, then it's suddenly absurd. You don't have a good 2-drop in Paladin right now. This card can also see play in control decks to make your late game minions even more powerful, and Paladin usually just hero powers on turn 2 anyways. So I think this is an insanely powerful card. Even if you buff cards like Sylvanas to a 6/6, this is already insane. Paladin tends to have a lot of cards. Also in super late game, this is an insanely powerful card. This is basically a poor man's Mistcaller, if you wanna say so, but way more playable. I think Mistcaller is great. The problem with Mistcaller is it's super slow and it has really bad stats. I think this is way better statted for its mana cost than the Mistcaller. And I think it's a great powerful card. You can play this in aggressive Paladins. You know, you have a bunch of 1-drops, you buff them all by +1/+1, which is insane. And also in control decks, I can easily see this card being played. If you don't have other good options, you just buff all your like mid-range cards or late game cards even more. So as soon as you buff, like as I said, 2 or 3 more minions, it is already great value for 2 mana, and it gives you something to do early, and it is a crazy cool new mechanic because you pre-buff your future minions in your early game. This is something we really didn't have in Hearthstone up to this point, and I really enjoy. This is like when they introduced the discover mechanic, which was a really cool new mechanic, and this is like a very cool new pre-buff early game mechanic. So double thumbs up for the creativity of this card. I think it's an excellent card, and I also can't wait to play this card. So the next card we have here is the Mean Street Marshal. It is a death rattle minion for 1 mana, it has 1 attack and 2 health. If this minion has 2 or more attack, draw a card. So another very cool unique effect, you play this minion on turn 1, your opponent plays a minion and then you buff it by, let's say, an Abusive Sergeant to 3 attack, trade it in, or you buff it with a Dire Wolf Alpha. So the only requirement for this minion is to have 2 attack, so you just have to buff it by 1. There's a lot of cheap buff cards Paladin has access to. It also pushes the existing weapons like the Light's Justice, or I mean Sword of Justice, which buffs your minions +1/+1, and it's great synergy because as soon as this minion has 2 attack, it draws you a card. And if this draws you a card, it's a great effect. Blizzard is definitely pushing the more aggressive. You will definitely not see this card being played in a control Paladin because you don't have good tools to buff this card. So it would be just a 1/2 minion for 1 mana, which is pretty bad. But in an aggressive Paladin deck, you would definitely play 2 of these cards. And you have finally more access to drawing cards besides Divine Favor, and Divine Favor is a horrible card design in my opinion, so it's great to have cool cards with condition. And you can also play around this card, like Priest has a new cool Priest card which reduces the attack of minion, so if you would reduce the attack of this minion then kill it, Paladin would not draw a card, so very cool interaction there. Yeah, it's a cool new aggressive 1-drop for Paladin with a huge upside, so yeah, looking forward to it. So let's move on to the Priest cards for this episode. It's also 2 cards. The first one is the Dragonfire Potion, deal 5 damage to all minions except dragons for 6 mana. So welcome back Light Bomb. It doesn't affect opponents' dragons, so if dragons would be the meta, so everyone would play suddenly dragons, this card would be horrible. You would not play this card. Another cool idea is as soon as Priest becomes dominant, and Priest can really become dominant with the cards that were introduced so far, then you can like counter the Priest Light Bomb with playing your own dragons, which is a very cool thing. It's a very powerful clear what Priest definitely needed. This is just a card Priest desperately needed, and Priest got it, so double thumbs up. And cool interaction with dragon decks, and it's a cool AoE for Priest dragon decks, and you can counter it with your own dragons, so a very good design. The next Priest card is the Pin Size Potion, give all enemy minions -3 attack this turn only. What is really cool about this card is that it costs only 1 mana, so it's extremely flexible. You can do crazy combos. This is an insanely powerful card because this makes Cabal is already a very powerful card, but this card makes Cabal an insane late game threat. And with this card and the board clear card, Priest is going to become a force to be reckoned with. It will definitely be tier 1. Like in my prediction video, I predicted after the nerfs that Priest will be the worst class to climb the ladder with, and with this video I'm going to predict that Priest is going to become a tier 1 deck and it will own it up on the ladder. Like this card is insane in Priest. Insane combo potential. If you have a board you can trade into the other board. That this card costs 1 mana is insane. The value for 1 mana is so good, and it makes Cabal a card that is good in any stage of the game, so you can auto-include that Cabal Shadow Priest in Priest, which is absolutely broken. I think Priest is going to crush it, and I can't wait to play this card. I'm super excited to play this card. It's a tier 1 super insane mega hyper. I'm done. I'm out. Let's move on. Let's move on to the Rogue class. We have 2 cards here in this episode. Shaku the Collector is a legendary. It is a 3 mana legendary with 2 attack, 3 health, stealth. Whenever this attacks, adds a random card to your hand from your opponent's class. So The stats are really bad for 3 mana. It has barely the average stats of a 2-drop, so you pay 1 extra mana for stealth and a pretty good effect. Whenever this attacks you, yeah, basically get a random class card. I hate this effect. I don't think this is good design, because getting a random card from your opponent's class, it is really bad from a competitive standpoint, because both players cannot utilize it before it happens and after it happens. The opponent cannot play around the card. It's impossible to play around every single card that he can potentially get, and you cannot play plan it in advance, because you also don't know what you will get. Randomness is really bad. This kind of randomness is really bad. So I absolutely dislike this card from a competitive point of view, because you can obviously get something absolutely crazy. You cannot interact with this card. It has stealth, and very rarely you can kill a stealth minion with 3 health on turn 3. So your opponent will guaranteed get like a card. So basically the value from this card, it might be a powerful card. The value from this card is definitely not bad for 3 mana. Rook doesn't really have that many free drops that you play, so it gives you another cool option. But it's probably good, but I hate the design of this card. Yeah, not good. I don't like it. Stealth, you cannot interact with it, and the effect, randomness, both players cannot utilize it with skill. I hope it will just be a fun card and won't see you playing competitive Hearthstone. Let's move on to the next class and the final class, which is Warrior. And I have to apologize, it was actually apparently only 1 Rogue class card in this episode. But for Warrior we have 2 at least. So the first one is the Ally Armorsmith, or the Ally Armorsmith. 5 mana, 2/7 taunt. Whenever this minion deals damage, gain that much armor. So it is a defensive card, similar to Healbot, but much better, because armor is always better than heal. Or it has taunt as well, so it is a taunt minion, so your opponent has to attack into it. Rip Face Hunters. Same stats as a Yeti, which has like a total amount of 9 stats, 2 attack and 7 health. Weak distribution, very low attack power. It is super weak against Cabal, Shadow Priest, and the Kodos, so you can just steal it. It's tough to save. This card will be powerful. I really don't like 2 attack minions that are mid-range or high cost. So this card might not see too much play, because Priest will definitely be in the meta. And yeah, this is just the number 1 minion you want to steal, and definitely Priest will push out this card from the meta. Like if I want to do already a meta prediction with just the 39 cards that were released. So Priest will be very strong. I already predicted it to be a tier 1, and then you cannot play this card in Warrior just because everyone plays double Cabal Shadow Priest. And if Dragon Priest is also very powerful, and everyone plays Bookworm, so and this Bookworm is played on turn 6 as well on curve, so this card will probably see very little play if that happens. If nobody plays Kodos, if nobody plays Cabal, if nobody plays Bookworms, then this card will definitely see play. But I predict that those cards will be played a lot, so it's cool design. I wish this card would have 3 health, then you have 3 attack, then it needed definitely lower health count. But it's cool that it has so much health, because it will gain you a lot of armor. But yeah, I don't see this card to see too much play. It really depends on the meta. So we finally arrived at the last card for this episode. It is the Stolen Goods. Give a random taunt minion in your hand +3/+3. For 2 mana, +3/+3 is really powerful, but it has a condition to buff a taunt minion. We can already tell that with the released Warrior class card so far, that they really want to push the taunt team, also with the previous card I just showed you guys. If we buff the 2/7 +3/+3 and it is suddenly a 5/10 minion, that is a different story. If we have cards like this, then we will definitely see the 2/7 minion being played. This card is definitely very powerful, and it's very sick, the taunt minions that we've gotten so far. Also the 1 mana card, Hey Guys, or whatever the name was, discover, get a random taunt minion. So that is another cool archetype they're pushing, with this expansion, the Taunt Warrior. We have so many different playable warrior archetypes already, and this is like another warrior archetype, so I'm super excited to see if they're gonna make Taunt Warrior work, or Bolster Warrior, or however you want to call it, with this expansion. Super excited about the cards so far. A lot of great cards, a lot of cool new effects, and I hope you guys really enjoyed the second part of my Gadgetzan review, and stay tuned for the next episode. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, it helps me out a lot, and see you guys next time. Peace out.